prediction markets seem to have either implicit or complicit blessing of certain members of a certain family.
That's on the board.
Right? And so, I mean, at the risk of tinfoil hatting this, like how much of a role do you think that could play in the legal ramifications of it all?
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.
All right, welcome back to another episode of The Business of Betting. I'm your host, Jeff Edelstein. Find me at ingame.com, where I'm a senior analyst covering all aspects of the sports betting and gambling industry. And I'm here today with someone who also has his toes and fingers and hands in all aspects of the gambling industry, Shawn Fluharty from West Virginia. Shawn, I'm going to read from a list here because there's about 6 dozen things I got to get through. You are a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates.
Yes.
How long have you been doing that now?
I was first elected in 2014.
All right, so you're a veteron.
In political years? Yes.
You're an old man. Beyond that, you're also the president of Nickel G's. I mean, I'll never figure out the Nickel G part.
Tongue twister. National Council of Legislators from Gaming States.
There you go.
Yeah.
Where you're the president of.
Yes.
And you're also the head of government affairs for Play and Go.
Yes.
These last 2 things are really newish for the resume, yeah?
Yes. Well, I've been a member of Nickel G's for a number of years.
Right.
First elected. We ran sports betting and iGaming legislation 1819 in West Virginia. And I've been a member of, Nickel G's is a group, a bipartisan group. Gambling is one of the few things that's bipartisan still these days.
Right.
I mean, you can't find politicians agree on anything.
Sure.
But now they're starting to agree on a few things. And so I've been a member of Nickel G's for a number of years. And I started with Play and Go about 2 years ago, and I head up the government affairs.
So I'm just curious, being a lawmaker, talking about gambling at the legislative level with Nickel G's, and now as the head of government affairs at Play and Go, is there at times like tensions with there that we have to be like, yeah, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't kind of thing?
No, I mean, so first off, in West Virginia, we passed iGaming back in 2019.
Right.
So we have no real legislation coming across for voting purposes for my current role. So absolutely not part-time legislature.
Right.
It's been a real asset because now, I've seen the inside baseball and how laws get passed and how the importance of every state is so different. Play and Go is a worldwide company and they've been very big in Europe, but expanding to the US. And so they weren't quite sure how things work in the states as far as how laws are getting passed, and each state's so different. So if I'm in Ohio, you need to know exactly what's going on in Ohio, who the members are that are running legislation, who's going to be the spearheading individual to get it done. And then those things change by the territory. In Maryland, completely different issue. Down to Georgia, where they're trying to move sports betting. Like all these states have different intricacies, and being on the inside for a number of years now really has given me an asset on seeing how things get done, knowing how they get done, and being able to speak their language.
So I'm from New Jersey, and New Jersey has a reputation outside of New Jersey, the armpit of America. We put down our license plate. I feel like, and again, I'm not trying to demean anybody here, obviously. I feel like West Virginia, to the outsider, has, there's a certain, Hicksville, I think the industry was a little surprised that West Virginia was such a first mover.
Yeah, we were.
On sports betting and casino. What pushed it through, you think?
So my background, I'm an attorney by trade.
Okay.
So I went to West Virginia University College of Law, graduated law school there. It was part of the Sports Entertainment Law Society as a student at West Virginia University. And when I started practicing law, obviously gaming law is not real big in West Virginia, but when I became a legislator, I knew based upon what New Jersey was doing with PASPA, that it was moving through the courts. And so having that knowledge, I was able to work with legislation, and we actually passed our sports betting legislation prior to PASPA being overturned. We put a triggering clause in there that essentially said, when the Supreme Court comes back, we're good to go. And so West Virginia was on the map, and that was 2018. We fought with the leagues about the integrity fee, and it was we were at the forefront. And so they were spending money trying to get what they wanted. And that was part of my background, and then putting that into legislation. Fast forward one more year, we moved iGaming legislation, which you look forward today, and it's like, wow, you were able to go back to back, which is kind of unheard of these days. And, it's something I'm proud of. And I think my legal background and interest in sports and entertainment law really kind of was a catalyst for that.
There's a couple of things I want to unpack there. So first is the integrity fee, because we're talking at a time in 2018, and before, where it almost seemed like a foregone conclusion that the leagues were going to get there.
Yeah.
And here you are, in West Virginia, and I'm going to put words in your mouth telling the NFL to go fuck yourself.
Well, they came. I mean, they hired good lobbyists.
Right.
They worked. But here's the thing. Good lobbyists don't work if the votes are already counted, and I had all the votes. So they came in at the 11th hour. As many times that happens, and that's another thing. My current role of Play and Go is that, you want to actually know the state you're in, right? Know your audience,
right,
and the intricacies that come with it, and what's important in those states, and why legislators react the way they do. So when the 11th hour, these nice suits come into West Virginia, good luck with that audience, because we looked at it and said, wait a minute, we're going to do it our way. And like you said, West Virginia, it comes with a stigma, but it also comes as a chip on your shoulder to fight like hell. And that's what I've done since I've been elected.
Right.
And I can take that into my career now with Play and Go and working with Nickel G's, say, look down upon all you want, right? Oh, we're going to be small, or Play and Go is not big enough yet. We're, chip on the shoulder goes a long way.
So is there something in the culture of West Virginia that allowed you to easily talk to fellow legislators and legislators and get these gaming bills passed?
Well, look, gaming legislation is good policy. Whether we're talking sports betting, iGaming, and there's several reasons why. One, we talked briefly off air, it's bipartisan. Right? There's no certain political party that's pro or con when it comes to that issue. But what it does, it raises new revenue without raising taxes, which is a goal of every lawmaker. Okay. It also protects the consumer. When you look at every state constitution, the preamble to their constitution talks about protecting consumers and the general welfare of a state. And you have an obligation, a duty as an elected official to do that. So gaming legislation falls into those pillars of good policy that I think a lot of people don't realize on the surface. And if you take about 2018 window to today, when PASPA was overturned, thanks to New Jersey, things have changed with the public. Right. In other words, the stigma that follows gambling legislation is not there anymore. It's almost a zero-sum game. So you're not going to win or lose elections based upon your support or no support of gambling legislation. But what you are going to do is raise new revenue without raising taxes, and you're going to protect consumers by shrinking the black market and having those responsible gambling tools at your disposal. And those are all things that I think now, in 2025 and beyond, resonate not just with lawmakers, but the public at large.
So with that said, why do you think there's been such a stall out when it comes to iCasino?
Well, we had a presidential election recently, and we had a lot of states after COVID that were
a lot of money.
Right. I mean, it's a dollars and cents game. And we also had, and this is where I'm working on the ground, a real education gap with lawmakers on about what exactly it is.
Right.
And I think what's happening now is we're closing the education gap. We're having one-on-one meetings and explaining to legislators why this is good policy. And also, they're seeing the numbers come in, which is great, but you can't just get things done based on numbers. It's where is this money going? Who is it helping? And how can we step up as a state? Those discussions are at a different level now than they were years ago. While we haven't seen passage in the last couple of years, again, COVID issue is an issue, right, major election, but we have seen more bills introduced. And so thousands of bills get introduced in every legislative session, only hundreds pass. It's not easy. And we had, a few states early on, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, that jumped in early. But after that, the education gap needs to close, and we need to work as an industry to realize just because something makes money is not enough to get it across the finish line. You have to have direct conversations with legislators. And what's happening now with the sweepstakes issue, it's really ironic now that sweepstakes, which are now getting barred in state after state because they're illegal gambling, they're revenue theft out of states, it's helping spur the discussion on a regulated model. And it's going to help spur expansion of iGaming. That's what's going to happen next.
Everyone's woken up to sweepstakes.
So, well, here's the thing. And I talk about the education gap. Most legislators think, if it's not legal in my state, therefore it doesn't exist. Right. And now they're realizing, oh, wait a minute. Half of all consumers in the United States see illegal offshore sweepstakes for their online gaming. Okay, let's think about that. Half of all advertising is from an offshore illegal online casino. That's like moonshiners advertising next to Anheuser-Busch. Are you kidding me? Name another industry where that takes place. But it doesn't. Right. So now lawmakers are taking it into their own hands, whether it's through the Attorney General, whether it's through cease and desist letters, through their gambling authority, or through legislation. And I think what you'll see now is legislation that they've introduced in Massachusetts and Ohio, where they have a sweepstakes ban on top of a regulated iGaming market.
So sweepstakes, we're here at G2E, has gone from in the last 2 years, it's gone from 0 to 60 to what number would you put it at now? How fast is it moving?
It's parked.
It's parked.
Yeah, it's done. It's done. I mean, Governor Newsom will likely sign legislation by the end of this week, and the message is out there now.
Yeah. So I don't want to break any news to you, but a lot of people here at G2E are talking about something called prediction markets. I don't know if you've heard of them, where I feel like the playbook for a state to stop that seems different, obviously, than the sweepstakes model, especially as it seems to be just terminating its way through like the federal level.
It is. There's more layers. And look, what hasn't happened on the sweepstakes side is no companies are challenging it in court, right? They're just packing their bags and going home. They're not challenging it like Kalshi is.
Right.
You know, Kalshi's saying,
right. No, you sue Kalshi,
they're right back at you.
Right.
So now you have the third circuit's moving, like multiple circuits federally are moving. It's probably going to end up at the Supreme Court.
Right.
I will say from a legislative perspective that you look at as a lawmaker, and getting a bill passed isn't easy. Getting sports betting passed isn't easy. And then you see what's going on now where it's available everywhere. And if you're a lawmaker and you know there's revenue coming in and you know licensees have gone through the strenuous process to get licensed in your state, you kind of look at it and go, wait a minute, I thought this was a states' rights issue.
Well, that's what.
Yeah. So it's going to go to the Supreme Court.
So
I think.
Listen, I'm a dummy. I want to be clear, right? I'm a mile wide and an inch deep on a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But everything, like, you know, when PASPA gets overturned, right, states' rights issue. And if you like gambling or freedom, whatever, you're like, yay, states' rights, the Supreme Court got it right.
Yeah.
Abortion rolls around a couple years ago, Roe v. Wade, right? You know, looking back at that, states' rights issue. Whoa, no, we don't like, you know, oh, or yay, you know, it doesn't matter, right? But the one clear through line from like the last, 8 years of this Supreme Court, which now has only moved more towards the right, is that states' rights are a thing. And they really value states' rights on this court. So I have a very hard time, and maybe you could explain to me the opposite side of this, but I have, like, if this gets to the Supreme Court, in what world does the Supreme Court not call this a states' rights issue?
I agree. I mean, I think
I'm sure
you could see a carve-out potentially where maybe it's available in states but not on Indian lands. Like, there are so many layers to this. And I think after a post-PASPA world, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it was that decision. It was the Supreme Court saying it goes to the states.
Right.
And sports betting belongs to the states, and they can come up with their own.
Well, this Supreme Court saying everything. Like, I don't have the numbers. I have no idea. But I have to imagine any issue that is a states' rights issue has been litigated to the pro-states' rights side.
Yeah.
At the Supreme Court, right?
Well, look, the CFTC, I think, depending on who you ask, this is, like, what they're trying to do is caveat this and cloak it in a manner that says it's not sports betting.
Of course.
But when you're speaking to lawmakers, it really comes down to, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? And so that's kind of where I fall on this, and many other people do as well.
Right.
But that's, the Supreme Court will make the final decision, and we'll see where the chips fall.
Right.
But it's interesting, unlike sweepstakes, Kalshi's saying, no, we're going to go to the mat on this and fight it.
Right.
And with sweepstakes, I think they're playing the long game, and I think this is a conversation that needs to happen, is if, like, Play and Go made a decision not to be a supplier in sweepstakes in the U.S., period, full stop. We're not doing it. But many other companies do. So if you're a lawmaker and you have a regulated industry later, are those bad actors awarded with a license?
Right.
Or are they going to be sitting on the sideline for a period of time? Or is that just going to be part of, like, the licensing structure where you take that into consideration? And I think many of those companies are making the long decision, and when they're told to leave, they're starting to get out. Unlike the predictive markets where it's like, no, we're going to the mat on this, and we're going to fight it in the courts.
So I'm agnostic when it comes to prediction markets, right? But what I don't like, and here, I'll give you a metaphor, a real life metaphor. So a couple of weeks ago, I have a 16-year-old son, junior in high school, and he is the stereotypical junior in high school, right? And he was going to a friend's house after a football game, a little party, whatever, and I had to pick him up. We had to pick him up. And a friend, buddy of his was going to sleep over. So I said, I'll pick up around 10. It's like, 10, that's so early. All right, well, I'll call you later. I end up going to a friend's house of my own, right? And I text my son, and I say, what time do you want to pick you up?
Yeah.
He goes, 10's fine. I go, well, now I'm out. He goes, all right, fine, 10:30. I don't want to cause any trouble. My son is very mature. So I say, all right. So I pick him and his friend up, take him back to the house. They make some pizza. I have a detached garage that we turned into an office/family room, right?
Yeah.
And they go out there, the two of them. Good night, see you tomorrow. 4 hours later, my wife's phone rings. It's my town's police saying, everybody's okay, nobody broke any laws, but your son and his friend were out riding their bikes. As it turns out, after good night, they got on their bikes, went back to the party.
Okay.
Okay? And so I'm like, dude, what,
That's just for being out past curfew? What was the issue?
For the police?
Yeah.
Well, it's 2:45 in the morning. Who should be out? The idea, the police said that there had been some car break-in, so they were stopping people, whatever. The issue, though, was that they were literally going over a highway. All right. So I'm telling you this story to get to this point, right? I'm like, dude, what were you thinking? Like, you don't sneak out. That's not cool, And his response was, well, you never told me that I couldn't.
So you're a prediction market.
That's right. So you never told us we couldn't. And that's what rubs you the wrong way about how they're going about this. It's sports betting. It's so fucking crazy to sit there with a straight face and say that it's not. I feel like if it does bite them in the ass, I feel like that's when it ends up biting them in the ass. It's like a little bit of the hubris saying, no, we're not.
Yeah. We're not quite that. Same thing with sweeps, though, right?
Of course.
They're saying, well,
and it's bitten them in the ass.
The gaming mechanic, and that's a great point, because if they wanted to do it the right way, they go into states, they lobby on behalf of themselves, and they say, we need legislation for sweeps. And here's why we feel we're different. But we're not just going to come in and infiltrate the market that's already there for online casinos. Whether you have a state like West Virginia and Pennsylvania and others that have put something on the books, or whether you have prohibited, right? You've decided, no thanks, we don't want to do that.
Right.
But to kind of put your nose in the air and say, we're going to do this regardless, and then advertise like crazy to constituents, and then who bears the cost? So say you are operating on a sweeps platform and you have addiction issues or anything comes up, well, who pays for that if you're having services in the state?
State.
Okay.
Right.
Well, in a regulated market, there's money going into it, there's things that are fully funded,
right.
And that doesn't quite happen in a black market, which is why, for lawmakers, that's why it's important to have regulators on the books. And that's the conversation that is turning to. But to your point, I think as a lawmaker, and now I meet with them regularly, and if you see somebody who's kind of coming in and not playing by the rules or finding loopholes, right? Oh, we're like McDonald's. That's one of the arguments that are made.
Right.
Sweepstakes, that's like McDonald's.
Right.
And I said, no, well, you're the hamburglar because you're just stealing revenue from the state. Like, that's total BS. Your main product at McDonald's is the burger.
Right.
What's the main product for sweeps?
Right.
It's the casino. Right. I mean, come on. So that's why I think you've seen that's kind of an organic reaction of states. They're just kind of like, nah, this is BS.
Right.
We're not dealing with this.
And when it comes on the prediction market side, I know New Jersey, Nevada, Maryland.
Maryland's fighting it very hard.
Massachusetts, I think, has filed suit. So
I think Ohio even recently as well.
Right. So what's stopping the other states from getting involved in filing suit? And the follow-up, or kind of the same question, where, like, the people you talk to, the legislature you talk to with Nickel G's, what's like the vibe?
Well, the vibe is in nearly 40 states, sports betting has gone through the legislative process.
Right.
And it should be followed. I mean, that's the vibe. It's like, hey, wait, we did this. We have operators that are operating, and we have the ability to oversee that, go through the strict licensing process. Can the CFTC really oversee all 50 states? Do they have the bandwidth for responsible gambling to do that? I think the answer currently is no.
Right.
Now, whether they can later, maybe not. And that's part of the argument here.
The other part of this is that when we talk about responsible gambling, right, is that I could see by not calling it gambling, well, by having sports betting markets right next to soybean markets, right?
Yeah.
You can make the argument, I'll make the argument on their side, well, we're not gambling. We're, this is prediction. This is whatever they want to call it. You don't see a lot of like commercials, are you trading penny stocks? Call 1-800. You know what I'm saying? And so they almost have a pretty good argument not to have to burden themselves with RG by saying we're not the G board.
It's essentially what they're doing. It's
Right.
just stepping aside and say, well, we're the soybean market. Another part of that as well is like these prediction markets, where's the end on that? Like, how far can you go? And we don't know yet, but it seems like every week something new is popping up that's under the sports betting umbrella.
Right.
And it started out like, oh, you're just gonna, bet essentially the lines on the game, or you're gonna bet who wins and loses. Now it's parlay talk and all this. It just keeps pulling and pulling and pulling. And you heard, I think DraftKings was speaking today, and Flutter. And so, I mean, these companies now that have gone through the state licensing process, which is strenuous, are now looking at it and going, well, now we got to get into this market. And I don't blame them. I mean, they got to make a business decision. So it'll come to the Supreme Court. We'll see.
Without getting, I think, our general politics aligned, so without getting too deep into the political of it, the fact that I gotta be careful, right? The prediction markets seem to have either implicit or complicit blessing of certain members of a certain family
That's on the board.
right? And so, I mean, at the risk of like, tinfoil hatting this, like how much of a role do you think that could play in the legal ramifications of it all?
I don't know about the legal ramifications.
Right.
Like that's going to be a decision by the Supreme Court based upon clear intent of the statute and whether it's under the purview of the CFTC. But there's still politics involved in all of it, and people get hired. In this case, as a board advisor or whatever the title is.
Right.
I understand how it works.
Sure.
That's kind of that's the name of the game in politics, right? You try to bring in people to bring momentum, and that's just how these things work.
Again, using like your expertise legally and politically, is there, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, do you think like there's a path where the Supreme Court, because like Kalshi and Polymarket are doing with just soybeans and, stuff like that, is and has been illegal, like in its own manner forever?
Well, that's where you bring in somebody like Dan Wallach to go through the weeds on all this. But I think it's clear that this is gaming.
Well, the sports part.
Yeah, and whether, that then goes back to the states, or if it's on Indian lands, they carve that out.
Right.
Those are some of the questions that are out there.
Is there a concern, and I think it was Captain Jack Andrews actually had tweeted this idea out a few weeks ago, we might be not far enough in the process for it to actually be a concern, but is there a concern that like Kalshi could end up saying, 0.01 cents on, 5 aces on the next spin of the wheel?
Hey, I put that out there not too long ago, and people are like, oh, that's really out there, but to my point.
Why is it out there?
Well, like, there's no end. So Are we going to start then having prediction markets on whether a bonus game hits on a spin?
Right.
And the iGaming side? Like, is that the next, I've said that in jest, right? But kind of has a point. Yeah, why not? Where do we stop? Where does it end? And there's no real, it's like, that's why it's a wild card. And I like having a regulated environment that we know the checks and balances, and we have kind of the barriers in place to keep things on the up and up. But where's the end?
So if the Supreme Court comes in and says this becomes a states' rights issue, do you think most states would seek to put the kibosh on it, or do you think?
I mean, obviously, if it's a revenue generator, they're going to look at it. If they can put on it. Here's the interesting part of all this.
Right. Do you think like this deals will be made,
Well, I mean, I think you could go to the table just like iGaming is and try to carve out a lane, and that's perfectly fine. But what's interesting here that I don't think gets enough attention is that they're putting everything on the federal side, right? They're putting all their chips on the table for a federal decision, a Supreme Court decision, whatever it may be.
Right.
Whoever the new CFTC head is. But what about when a new administration comes in and they just completely put somebody else in, play politics with it, and reverse it? I mean, these things can happen.
Sure.
So I tend to think these states, even though it takes longer, that's the better play in the long run. Would it be to go into states and try to carve out your own, just like we've seen with DFS. I mean, similar things are happening there. So it's interesting because the politics of it all is, like you said, they could hire certain people that are going to help you move the ball down the field. But when a new administration comes in, could that just reverse all the work you put in?
Well, again, we've seen so much happen in the gambling space over the last, 10 years or so. But again, the speed and, it's like a Mad Max middle fingers out the window that these companies, that Polymarket, Kalshi, they're just coming, they're just barreling down the road, right? And yeah, it's fascinating. The one thing that the only thing I know that anyone who says that they know, they don't want to listen to that because
I will say it's funny that it's all coming to to a head now, but when we passed sports betting in West Virginia, we had a rather broad language in there, and I was envisioning kind of this day coming where we're betting on politics.
Yeah.
And we had a market open for one day, similar to now your Polymarkets and everything, on betting on politics. And our governor at the time, Jim Justice, held a press conference, and he was like, we're not going to do that. But we were looking ahead.
Right.
And we knew this day was coming, and we actually had the language in there that would allow for it. And I think that's a whole different can of worms.
Of course.
Yeah. Than it is, hey, you're mimicking a book.
Right. Well, right.
But the betting on politics will probably surpass about any other market if it goes full.
Yeah. I opened a Kalshi account to battle the New Jersey governor's race.
There you go.
I mean, I really did, because I saw, the Democrat, was 88 cents and I'm like, that's not, she shouldn't be 88 cents. And it's tightened up a little bit, but I'm going to let it ride. Listen, I was doing some research on it. You were a journalism major in college? Is that correct?
Yes. So respect to you. You're the fourth branch of government. At least that's.
We used to be.
Yeah. Well, things are a little different these days.
We used to be. Did you want to be a journalist, or is that just the path towards a legal career for you?
No, I always was interested in journalism. I love to write. I love TV, radio.
Right.
in journalism I saw as the fourth branch and the importance of in a free society to have free journalists doing their job and being the watchdog on the government. And I always thought that was something that I would be good at and that was important. And I kind of just the natural progression from journalism school, and I was also a poli-sci major. So, those kind of things just took me on to the next evolution of going to law school. But journalism, I've always seen it as checks and balances on the government.
Was there anything in particular growing up in West Virginia that pushed you toward journalism, or you were just interested in it?
What's funny? What I really liked, remember Howard Dean?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Woo! Yes. So that was like the catalyst for basically news taking a different route. If you look at the numbers on that, I remember doing a research project on it, and that Dean Scream played like 7,000 plus times on Fox News and other major outlets. And we went from just reporting the news to like really playing it up for the clicks.
Right.
To we're a clickbait society now, and
Yep.
things have changed. And that was like a turning point. At least that was like, for me, I was like, this is really changing the game politically. And now things happen on a daily basis in our politics that make the Dean Scream look like an absolute
Oh my God.
nothing.
Right.
A big nothing burger.
Right.
But it ended his presidential campaign
Right.
back in the day. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. As you were saying earlier about, the watchdog and everything. I spent 26 years at the Trentonian newspaper in Trenton. And I remember I wasn't a State House reporter, but I was looking for it. But, we had State House reporters. We had the State House on occasion. And they had reporters row. There must have been 80, 90 people from, local to the New York Times to the Washington Post. They were in every State House. Now it doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Everything's done online, if at all. Locally, there's, the death of the local newspaper. I'm not sure what it's been like in West Virginia. It's been decimated. I joke, not really joking. A growth industry is crooked politician because nobody's watching it anymore.
You're not wrong. I mean, that's gone. Like the watchdog, and now it's like professional wrestling at this point. And facts don't matter. Narratives do. And it's all about the narrative. And that's kind of where we're at. And the way I see it nationally on the national stage. Now, I still think there's a lot of good independent journalism. There's a lot of, even in West Virginia, we still have our newspapers, but they've been kind of conglomerated together. And for the information going out, I mean, you want it to be unbiased and you want it to really serve as a true check. And I'm not so sure we have that anymore. Maybe a few like you left, but it's all narrative based, It's like PR campaigns.
Yeah, it's interesting also. I've seen go back, 40, 50 years ago, and journalists were some of the top two, I think doctors were the first. Trust. Americans, who do you trust, right? And now it's like at the bottom.
How do we get there?
How did we get there? What's a way out of it? And I realize this has nothing to do with sports betting, because, but I am curious from your perspective as someone who knows journalism, someone who is a legislator and, sees the way this works. I'll put a fourth hat on you. Start a media company. How do you do it to
Well, you can't succeed. You got to sell a narrative. It's professional wrestling.
That's it.
Has to look a certain way, has to have the right sound bites, and the federal government's just kind of, and that's why I always say for the gaming side, the states are the adults in the room. The decisions happening at the state level truly are ones that, you always say like, oh, the Senate is the chamber that's the most deliberative body. That's what kind of like the lingo. But I'll say when it comes to the gaming side of things, that states are the deliberative body. They're the ones that are implementing regulations. They're the ones making sure that consumers are protected. And now to have things come in over the top, from the top ropes back to the wrestling, to have things come over the top changes the dynamics. And as far as journalism goes, I don't know what was the turning point. I don't know how we get back to things being boring again. How about some boring news?
Right.
Can we just have something that, does every story have to be breaking news?
I was growing up, when you were watching TV and they broke in, somebody was dead.
You knew things hit the fan.
Yeah, somebody was dead, we're declaring war.
Yeah. Everything scrolls, and it's a different game. I don't know. Like you said, if you start a media company, how would you be successful?
Right. Well, there's no market, and I'm sure as a politician you recognize this. There's no market to saying moderation, right? I mean, you have to be screaming from one end or the other. And I think also that's social media has played such a role in all this, right?
Yeah.
Because if I go on Facebook right now, and I'll use Facebook because, at this point you're an old man if you use Facebook, right? If I go on Facebook right now and say something moderate, like there's really two sides to this story. I'll get no engagement. I can go on Facebook right now and type the word Trump, period, or for that matter, Biden, period, and that'll be it. It'll be off to the races. And, I feel as if most Americans, right, are within a, circle of moderation. Okay. Yes. There's levels of what, abortion here, but I think most Americans are in the circle of somewhere I'll hear the other side and be friends with somebody on the other side. Then there's like 5% on each side that are just the loudest people in the room. They're the ones that get promoted on social media. And then as a result, we're kind of led down this path to believe that that everyone is
when in reality we have a hell of a lot more in common than we don't.
Of course.
Go have a beer with your neighbor and turn off the TV and have a conversation, shake a hand.
Yeah.
Those things. But yeah, to your point though, what sells is the loudest in the room. That drives the clicks, that does all of that. So what's great to bring it back to the gaming side, and we're here at G2E, is that it's one of the few things where I don't know the political party of the individual that I'm talking to, even when it comes to gaming, right?
Right.
Because it's one of the few things left that we don't have this polarization for certain parties pushing it.
Right.
Like, good policy is good policy, and gaming falls into that. But with everything else right now, it's hard to find those few opportunities. And I think that truly, if you look at states that are moving gaming policy, it's not just red states or blue states.
Right.
And you're getting bipartisanship, which is a thing that's rarely seen these days.
Right. We were talking earlier about the COVID money being one of the reasons why iCasino kind of stalled out. I've always long thought that, I'll say when New York passes an iCasino legislation, I feel like that would kind of tip over a bunch of other states. Based on from what you're hearing in your roles, are there any states that are like tip of the tongue that are like closing in on casino?
Well, so as I said earlier, more bills have been introduced for iGaming than any other time previously. States like Ohio, which you wouldn't think, would be a state that's on the brink, they're having real meetings. I testified there a few months ago, and they're considering iGaming legislation. Right. New York, obviously, Senator Adalbo has done a great job of trying to get the information out and realize that, hey, it's going on in New York, and to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion+.
Right.
So let's go plug that hole and shrink the black market. I do think that he's making strides. I think the downtown casino issue has been like the elephant in the room in New York. Yeah. So it's kind of put that on the back burner, but that's getting ready to be finalized. Yeah. So I think that's going to put New York back in play. But I do think a state like Ohio, they're even having conversations in the South. Can you,
Right.
You ever thought that you would be talking about that 10 years ago?
No. The sports betting now, for a second. Well, flip it into my head again. You're wearing all the hats. I'm trying to hit the hats here. What's wrong? Why are there so many legislators who are now looking at sports betting from Ohio to New Jersey even? We're like, hey, golden goose, we're going to keep, tapping the Mac, as I used to say. They're hitting, they're raising the taxes. And
well, politically, it's easy for them to say, the gambling industry, let's tax them.
Right.
They're always kind of look at, even in West Virginia, our LVL owners. So we have LVL machines in our bars and restaurants, and they're taxed at like 51%. I mean, it's crazy, but they've also been in play the longest. So you go back to the well, and that's why iGaming's great, because it's new revenue. Right. We're not raising taxes on anybody. We're raising new revenue, and that has been lost in translation with lawmakers. And when they realize that sports betting's about here, but iGaming's, it's a different ballgame. I mean, you're talking what the ratio is now, 4-to-1 almost in certain states, depending on the tax rate. Right. So it's something that pulls that lever, so then you're not running out and taxing somebody else through the roof.
In New Jersey, where I live, the Giants and Jets call New Jersey home, but it's New York, which ticks me the hell off. But there's a true dividing line, as running through the center of the state between Philly fans, New York fans. West Virginia, I'm guessing, is similar when it comes to sports, I guess.
So I'm from the Northern Panhandle in Wheeling. I'm about 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So Pittsburgh, the Steelers and the Pirates and the Penguins, they're the homegrown team. Right. Whereas if you're in the southern part of the state or Eastern Panhandle, if you're in the Eastern Panhandle, it's a DC basically area. And then the South, you tend to like Cincinnati. So it's kind of
So there's three. Going into three. What pushes it over the edge? If you're like in the geometric, center of it all, where would the lean be, do you think?
That's a good question. So if you're in the Northern Panhandle where I'm at,
I gotta think there's more Steelers fans in general in the state.
I would say that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we have no professional team. So our professional team is the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Right.
I mean, that's I just went to the BYU game before coming here. Like, it's our pro team. That's who everybody backs. So then on the professional side, that's when we had the fight with the leagues. I was like, look, you don't have a pro team here. You know, like, I can go to my colleagues and it's fair game. So the North is definitely Pittsburgh-centric. South, more of a Cincy, and then the Eastern Panhandle, DC.
Has there ever been any push to get a pro team into the state?
I mean, we've had discussions in the past. I think Wheeling would make a lot of sense because we're so close to Columbus and Pittsburgh and a higher metropolitan area. But no, nothing ever caught any fair, real win behind.
Well, that's why like Columbus, has an NHL team, which I didn't even realize. I was sort of the standings like at some point in the past. I'm like, holy shit, Columbus. Yeah. Like so, and all these leagues they talk about expanding. I'm down. Wheeling's got rolls off the tongue right off the bat, right?
We know the Wheeling Nailers, they're an ECHL team franchise, and they are, I only know how that works in the hockey leagues, but it's probably like a AA or single A kind of thing, All
right, look, I'm going to ask you the question that you have to ask. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask the question to somebody in your position. When we come back here next year at G2E, as sweepstakes, as we discussed, went from 0 to 60 to par, what speed is prediction markets?
Oh, they'll be further ahead than sweeps. I truly think sweeps are done.
Right.
I don't think they went about it the right way. I think they have essentially, now that the response from states is clear, it's overwhelming. I don't think they have a seat at the table.
Right.
I do think prediction markets have more of a seat at the table to put that in kind of, the hierarchy that you're asking for.
Right.
As far as number of states getting involved, it all depends on the Supreme Court decision. And
which I think is going to happen quicker than we think, right? Because it's at the Third Circuit now.
It's moving.
Yeah.
It's moving. But you never know. Like, I practiced law at a pretty large law firm for 10 years prior to joining Play and Go, and things move. Sometimes they move very quickly, and then other times they sit on a docket for a hell of a long time. And so you don't know.
We don't know. We'll leave it right there because nobody knows nothing, I think, is that's the one thing I'm learning over here, G2E. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.